All right. Well, thanks to everybody who's joining. Got a couple of great viewers jumping in right now, and I just want to give you a quick overview. So I am Jay LaBeouf. I am a lecturer at Stanford in two different departments. In the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics, and I'm also a lecturer for the Stanford Warner Music Group Leadership Initiative. The third hat that I'm wearing is actually with Real Industry, which is a nonprofit that I'm running. And the focus of Real Industry is to actually take you behind the scenes into how industry really works. Um, so let me tell you a little bit about the format that we'll be going through. First off, if you're just finding this Google Hangout, uh, you're hopefully taken here because of Careers in Media Technology. So that's a course that we're running right now online, and I can give you the link in a sec. But Careers in Media Technology takes you behind the scenes into how some of the leading media tech companies and explores how they really works. So the purpose of this course is to actually discover how products are made and uncover the roles, responsibilities, and skill sets that you'll need in order to enter this awesome industry. To sign up for the course and to learn more about it, you can enroll at Kadenze.com, and the course is totally free. So I encourage anybody and everybody who's a student or an early career professional interested in working for amazing companies like Avid, Pandora, Native Instruments, Adobe, iZotope, SoundCloud, Turtle Beach, Sonos, you name it. Check out Kadenze.com and look for Careers in Media Technology for free. So I'm also a lecturer at Stanford. The department I'm at is called CARMA, the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. So there's a link that you can check out for more information about what we work on at CARMA. A little link to my nonprofit, Real Industry. You can join there to stay informed on other classes that we're putting on that are in support of your industry education path. And lastly, but certainly not least, a great place to check out information on iZotope, iZotope.com, because our amazing guest today is Stacey Messier, who is well, Stacey and I actually met when she joined as a product design director at iZotope, and she's now a creative strategist. Before I introduce Stacey, a couple of little administrative things for you. The first is if you're logged in, you can probably see the Q&A pane. If not, look on your screen. Probably on the left-hand side, there's a way to show Q&A. When this pops up, it'll bring up this pretty cool pane on the right-hand side where you can type in your questions and submit questions to us. If you're having problems accessing that, you can submit your questions to Chuck. Chuck is standing by, and he'll enter questions on your behalf. And that's CALLEN5 at stanford.edu. All right, let me turn that off for y'all. And I'm back. Again, a little bit more about the format. So immediately after this session, we're going to do a Soul Republic wireless headphone giveaway. In order to qualify for the giveaway, you actually have to participate. That's how we know that you're here and how we know to give it to you after the end of the session. So the way that you do that, first, with that Q&A box, submit a question. Once you submit a question that you're interested in, that lets us know that you're on the session, you're being participative. If you don't see the Q&A box, email Chuck. And so that's CALLEN5 at stanford.edu. That'll let us know that you're participating. Other than that, you get a great chance to win some headphones and learn a ton of information in the process. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get us started, and then we'll turn it over to you guys for either your video questions or questions from the Q&A app. So I am thrilled to welcome Stacey Messier. Stacey is a woman who's actually an inspiration to many of us who are interested in graphic design, product design, user experiences, and user interface design. And I mentioned Stacey and I actually met at iZotope when she was joining as the product design director. Now she's the creative strategist at iZotope. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
So, I'll actually steal the first question. Stacey, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started? Tell us about your background. What did you study in school, and how did you end up becoming the creative strategist at iZotope?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's loaded. I hope you guys are ready. Okay, so I have a degree in painting, not in the house kind, but in the fine art, palettes and painting, colors. For the graphic designers in the room, if you know what a Pantone color is, I can mix Pantones from scratch, no problem. I can make you that 373 green like you've never seen before. So I have what seems like a completely unrelated academic degree to what I started into as a graphic design career. Painting was like boot camp for color and layout, and you still end up learning all of the foundational techniques in terms of understanding what it takes to compose anything on the page, whether it's type, imagery, how all of those items work together, etc. So from college, because I rocked my senior show early, I ended up so in art school, that's how you resolve your degree. You end up giving a senior show. They chose 3 of us painting majors to show really early. We finished up by February, so I spent the rest of my time in college that senior year just looking for a job. Because as a girl with a painting degree, my dad was harping down my throat every day, like, how are you going to get a job with a painting degree? How is this even possible? I was like, don't worry, I got it. It's going to happen. So I networked my butt off, and through the Career Center, actually, I ended up landing an opportunity as a temp in-house graphic designer at Loctite, and that's Loctite, the super glue company. I was there for a good 6 months, but again, it was only a temp position, and if you are a student, you know that your health insurance will run out at some point, and you will need benefits at the end of the day, so I went shopping for more of a real job. And that landed me at my first time at an agency, at an advertising agency called Red Rocket Brand Engineers. There I was the lead art director for a deep discount cigarette brand. Mind you, I am a non-smoking singer. So I had to do a little bit of a morality check. Advertising, even back then in good old 2005, was not what it was in the 80s. So Joe Camel wasn't a thing anymore. This is a deep discount brand. They weren't really touting their wares to teenagers or trying to just scratch the surface of, the awful side of cigarettes. But I also needed a job, and I needed to get better at my craft, knowing that I didn't have a degree in graphic design in the first place. So I chose to sacrifice it, and let's do it. From there, let's see, Red Rocket went through a couple of rounds of layoffs, made me feel a little unstable, so I ended up hopping ship and found another opportunity that was a little closer to home at a company called MD&C. MD&C was also an agency, but they were much more local, regional, had clients like Lyman Orchards and some health insurance and, kind of ran the gamut. Classic graphic design firm, advertising agency sort of thing. Red Rocket was 5 years old at the time when I had joined them. MD&C was turning 35. So big difference compared to your experience at an employer where one is a dinosaur and one is brand new and feels like a startup. From MD&C, I started to do a lot of business development work. I started to help them pitch clients. I did a ton of work on RFPs, and RFP stands for Request for Proposal. And so what that means is, for example, the state of Connecticut, which is where I'm from, will put up to bid a request for proposal and ask for you to bid to them an idea of how you would promote the state of Connecticut and its tourism, for example. So MD&C had held that account for a long, long time, and we went after a lot of government work. So I got involved in a lot of those business ideas. I went to chamber meetings. I went to networking events. I got my feet really wet when it came to the networking side and started to build up a small pool of mentors and then started to build up some freelance work on the side so that eventually I could quit the day job and start my own graphic design firm. So from MDNC, that's exactly what I did. I left and transitioned to being an entrepreneur, and sort of me and NPR were best buds for a long time. And I started Triple Frog, which I had for 6 years. And we were a graphic and web design firm. We did everything. One administrative note, I needed a power cable. Thank you, Sky, so much. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sky.
As I'm looking at my battery, just counting down and dying.
You know, careers in media technology would be nothing without electricity to power all these amazing devices we have.
Seriously. So let's see. One last roundup on where we left off. So Triple Frog was graphic and web design. We ran the gamut. We did event planning. We had cigars. We had liquor. We had healthcare. We had children's museums. There was no industry we did not know. And so we ran that, and it got to the point where our top 5 clients ended up losing funding. And so it was a make or break moment of, do I stick it out and keep going and trying to make this work and basically start over? Or do I get a standard job and apply my skills in-house, which is kind of where my comfort zone was at. I was tired of the chase. I was ready to help out internally somewhere else. So I took a position up here in Boston, got out of Connecticut, and worked at basically a parent company of sports nutrition supplements and skincare for a year, and then hopped over to iZotope, which was the dream job. As the vocalist, as I mentioned earlier, and then as a graphic designer, I was always curious who made the faceplates on all those amazing plugins. And wouldn't it be amazing if I could be a part of that, as well as work at a music company? So I was the product design director for a good year, and then our entrepreneurial incubator team, really that's handling the iPhone app that's now out in the world called Spire. There's a Spire team of us. There was a really good opportunity for someone to hop in on the marketing side, which was much more my comfort zone, to be honest. The product side was an excellent learning curve and amazing to work with 4 fabulous product designers. And then on the marketing side of things, I was always asking the hard questions about all the products we were pumping out there. So it was a really good fit to hop over on this side of things and take that creative director role, the product design knowledge, and mix it all together to be that liaison between product and marketing.
Fantastic. So what is your day-to-day look like now?
Oh man, it changes every day. It depends. Some days I'm a one-woman show, basically. There's one of me, just one.
And how many people are at iZotope?
Just shy of 100.
Okay.
So in the marketing department, we have the bulk of people that are dedicated to our pre-existing products, and then Spire has one person in marketing, which is myself. So my day-to-day changes and ebbs and flows from really high-level future conversations about where our platform is heading and the initiatives that we're building, as well as I come in the morning and I check who's following us on Twitter, and I have conversations with them, and I try to build our community about Spire and have more people record their songs and add it to our SoundCloud group, for example. And then on the flip side, I'll be working on partnerships with like-minded brands or lifestyle brands that we think our Spire customers and users would associate themselves with or relate to increase those sort of like authentic conversations. That's my biggest tipping point, is that basically every day I try to do something that allows the most authentic way we could possibly interact with potential customers and pre-existing customers.
So several of the things that you described, I think, relate to our first user submitted question, and for there's a lot of you now watching. I get a little view count at the bottom. It's pretty awesome. So for all of you guys watching, feel free to add your video so that way you can ask us a question in the future, or just type it into the Q&A box. I appreciate that. So our first question is actually from Serenity, who actually asks, what advice do you have? Let me select it. There we go. What advice do you have for somebody who majored in English but is trying to transition into product design? On the face of it, these are two totally different areas, but how can you bridge the gap?
Absolutely. And for a lot of these questions, where if any of you are coming in from different places in the universe that have nothing to do, so to speak, with product design, but you want to get into it, you sort of have to have that, take that initiative that it took to take this course and apply it to getting into collaboration environments, freelance work. Start getting your feet wet. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you don't put yourself out there and raise your hand and say, hey, I'd love to help you with that project. I'm willing to just, donate some time in order to get my feet wet with this thing, trying to build my resume up. I'm curious about it, or I'm really passionate about it, and I know this is the right path for me. You have to take that initiative and really, really put it out there and let the world know that this is where you're heading. I had to do the same thing when I started Triple Frog. It was like, what type of graphic design work do I want to do? I know I can do it. And so a large part of what I did was to just approach smaller businesses or companies that were in my area and say, hey, I'm new to this game, but I'm ready to give you a hand. How can I get in there and help? And that may be a pre-existing app company that's out there, or like a SaaS platform, a software as a service, or whatever the case may be that you're interested in product design, whether it's audio related or otherwise. And put yourself out there, whether it's an internship, and it could be short-lived, but as long as you've got some of that experience under your belt and you have the ability to build a portfolio, those are those opportunities that it's going to take to get you in the door.
Awesome.
I will say, too, your English question, so if you're an English major, you already have a leg up in your ability to communicate with people. Some of the most important things you can do as you start to work in the real world is your email is everything. How you write emails, how you message to different people, understanding your audience is part of the design, but it's also your ability to articulate what you're passionate about, what they need to consider when looking at a design you've created, and then also how to take that feedback in, articulate it to other people.
Great advice. So you had mentioned Triple Frog. There was a question just submitted about what was the day-to-day of running your own graphic design firm at Triple Frog, and what are some of the business lessons that you learned?
Good question. So day-to-day at Triple Frog, because I was business owner as well as creative director as well as graphic designer, you wear lots of hats. But primarily, once we really got established, let's say by year 3, we had a staff of, year 3 we were probably 5 people deep, I want to say. So it was really understanding how you manage others, how you work together. We created a very well-rounded team. So myself on the graphic design side, I had 1 additional art director on staff, and we had an account manager, a business manager, and our head of IT. So we had somebody that could do the web work, somebody that could think about insurance and HR stuff, and somebody that was face-to-face with the clients. And then I had a counterpart that I could delegate work to, and then also collaborate, because my style of managing projects is very similar to how I manage others, in that it's very lateral, in that your brain is going to just get fatigued and it's going to need a moment, and you're going to need that second set of eyes. It has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with getting to one goal together. And if that goal is for your client, if that goal is for the company you work for, sometimes you got to put everything aside and tackle a project together. So the day-to-day would really depend on business pitches, client development work, ideating on what we were going to pitch to clients next that they haven't thought of yet, but then also, putting together proposals and writing contracts. These are the things that you do when you own your own business in order to get the money in the door. Business lessons from owning Triple Frog. It's hard work. It's lonely work sometimes. Like I said to you in the beginning, when you start out as an entrepreneur, if it's really just you quickly realize whether or not you're a person who recharges with others around them, or whether you love and thrive in that by yourself environment. I needed a balance of both, where I needed my downtime and I needed to pretend I was in a cave, but then I needed some type of additional stimulation. So there were really only 2 shows on NPR that I did not like, and everything else was fair game, and podcasts and XM radio. Those are my buddies. Other business lessons. you do have to be willing to constantly chase. You've got to be your aggressiveness, your assertiveness, your all the things you don't know. You have to get really comfortable with what you don't know and be willing to aspire to those levels, to meet the demands that you didn't know that you set out for yourself. And also that you can build things up from nothing. I mean, we had no startup capital. It was all freelance work that started in my basement, classic story. And then as we got bigger and bigger, we got to the point where we needed to hire additional people to keep the business running.
Mm-hmm. So, versatility is a key thing that I hear going on. And a lot of the student submitted questions were about, I am in this field and I'm looking to figure out how I can, transition over to a different field.
Yeah.
What are some resources that you might recommend? So there were some questions about, what literature or videos do you recommend, or, once you're out in the real world, what is the best way to kind of develop UI UX skills and become qualified for some relevant positions?
So this goes back to the freelancing comment I made, and just making real work is your goal ultimately, because you have nothing to show for it. It's going to be really hard to get in that door. But some of the best resources I've found over the years are not necessarily books or video tutorials. They're conferences and networking groups. So in Boston, we have UX Boston is a huge meetup. Every event ends up holding at least 100 to 200 people. I had the great pleasure of speaking at that conference about premortems and lean UX and how to tie those things together. But it's incredible the type of people that you meet that are similar to all of you out there, that are either looking to transition into this place, or they're just looking to work together with others. And who can I collaborate with? And in that environment, the cold call sort of approach to walking up to someone, it's scary, don't get me wrong, but it takes some mustard to step up to that plate. But that cold call ability to walk up to someone and say, hey, my name's Jay. I'm looking to transition over to product design. Can you talk to me about what you've been up to lately, what projects you're into, if you freelance at all? Could I help you in those modes, or could we work together on a project so that it gives me an opportunity to do some learning with you? And with those moments, everyone's always willing to help. Everyone's always so excited to teach someone else something, especially at those events. So take a look at your meetup.com locally within the regions. Also, if there are some bigger ones that are worth traveling to. An Event Apart is one of my all-time favorite conferences. This year's was pinnacle. Most of the strategy that I'm deploying for Spire came from one talk at an Event Apart. So I highly recommend that conference. And it does cost a pretty penny to attend some of these, and it's hard to understand what's good, what's bad, what's worth the money. Go to those local free ones or the $35 conferences and talk to people to understand what's worth your money and your time.
Awesome. And would you be willing to post links to some of these conferences in the Kadenze forum?
Sure.
Awesome. So for all of you guys who are watching right now, if you can't scribble down all the links fast enough, yeah, we'll get a little forum going through the Careers in Media Technology Kadenze class, and you can see all those links, and also keep your questions going, because I have so many questions. It is totally awesome.
Sweet.
A great administrative thing while we're here. So for those of you who are like, hey, I'm trying to ask questions, a few of you said that you can't see the Q&A pane. That's okay, because there's a reason that Google Hangouts on Air is still completely free. We're trying to figure it out ourselves. So if you want to get a question, definitely email your question to Chuck Allen. So Chuck is, of course, TA for this. He's also the person right next to Stacey right now. Chuck, you can say hi. There's Chuck. So yeah, email your questions to callen5@stanford.edu, and we'll keep them going. Back to the Hangout. So Nikki, thanks so much for submitting. You submitted a question just as Stacey was asking about it. Really, Stacey, is it as much as just reach out to a company, be bold. Is there anything that they should be, mindful of when reaching out to a company?
Sure. I mean, there's certainly a veneer of professionalism we should all hold. Don't expect instant success. Rejection's going to be a thing. They might not have the time to talk to you. They might not have internships available. But if you phrase it in a much more smaller time commitment approach, so let's say you go to one of these meetups, you end up meeting somebody from BBDO. I'm going to be real big here and say BBDO is working on some new UX UI for an app that they're developing for Nike. I don't know. Let's pretend. And you want to get in on that, or at least learn from it, and know that the importance of networking and getting your feet in the door starts with building relationships. So yes, you want to be bold at stepping up to the plate and saying, hi, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. I'm very excited about this thing that you guys are working on. I'd love to take you out to coffee or lunch and just sort of pick your brain about that process and where it's heading. This is a much more casual way. It only confines them for a finite amount of time, as opposed to you being like, can you hire me like tomorrow? That would be great. That's the goal, but it's going to take some time for them to build trust in you, and for also you to get an idea that this is something you do really want to do or you want to be a part of. But chances are lots of companies out there hire freelance designers, UX consultants, all kinds of stuff. iZotope does regularly because we don't have the time to dedicate to everything every waking minute when we all of a sudden realize that we need it. So those opportunities are definitely out there. Or at the very least, you could get together with one of those graphic designers or the UX designers, UI designers, and say, hey, let's go grab a beer after work. I'd love to just get a sense of where you're heading. If you do have any freelance work, would you mind walking me through your portfolio? It's not necessarily buttering them up, but it's you learning from them as to how they got there and what their approach is and how they think of it. And they'll think of you as well.
I love that approach. And a phrase I hear a lot is, and I try to exercise, is polite persistence.
Exactly.
So if you think about how insanely busy you are, and then imagine that everybody else in the world is at that threshold.
Right.
Use that, because it might be really important for you to get in. And I grabbed this off of my desk. Imagine that each time you reach out to somebody and just share a blog post or ask if you can talk to them about their portfolio, you're kind of putting your business card delicately back on the top of the stack. Exactly. You're reminding them that you're there. And ideally, you're adding value each time. You're not just, if there was a business card on your desk that just said, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, you'd put it at the bottom. But if it's valuable to you, that's a great connection.
One other thing I'll add in, too, is that once you get past those initial conversations, what might be really cool for all of you that are focusing on UX, UI, and product design, ask them if they have any paper prototypes that they could walk you through. Be one of their test cases. See how they've built them. See if you had a couple of ideas that you could draw right then and there and help them facilitate the next set of ideas that maybe they hadn't gotten to yet. But that's a big piece of the pie that when I look for potential candidates to fill a product designer role, I want to see the whole end. I want to see that you have sketches, you have paper prototypes, you have wireframes, you have design, and then you have the final piece. Because if I never see the fact that you pick up a fat Sharpie or a pencil with loose drawings of where you think you're going to head, I still don't understand how you work. So if you can get that set of wheels turning and build that part of your portfolio, still very much important.
Very cool. And so for those of you who are just getting around to watching the the fourth session of Careers in Media Technology for user experience, user design, Stacey, you're saying so I happen to have the Spire app right here.
Yay!
A new iOS app from iZotope. So you're saying that this didn't just start out as somebody mocked it up in Illustrator and said, here's what it's going to look like, and then it got implemented? You're saying that there was actually scraps of paper with Sharpie.
Oh, yeah. There were boxes that slid across the paper. You'd be surprised. I absolutely came at paper prototypes with judgment. Like, there's no way my brain's going to fill in the gaps and actually feel like I'm really test driving something. no, your imagination takes hold. You fill in all the gaps just fine, and the person that's running the paper prototype exercise has to be the computer. So they will say, and now I'm going to do this. What was your reaction inside of your head if you didn't say anything? There's so much learning there. But yes, there's a lot of that to get to the finite point that we have in the app today.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's move over from, because we're talking low fidelity prototypes,
Yep.
like a paper prototype. I'd actually like to take a question from Jose. Jose logging in from Brazil. Thank you, Jose. So Jose is a music teacher in Brazil. He's created a music method in schools. He's looking maybe for some pointers for design guidelines for textual content.
Ooh. First of all, I love designing books and pages and pages and pages of stuff. Guidelines for textual content, your first goal in life is to make it as legible and as memorable as possible, right? You want people to retain the information that you're putting in that textual content. So make sure that each page, whatever it is that you're putting together, has breathing room. You want nice big fat gutters running along the sides, top and bottom as well. It may feel like you're squishing the amount of content, but at the end of the day, the human eye needs to relax. It will not know where to start if all it sees is text on text on text on text on text with no visual breaks, no nothing. So make sure that you add in illustrations, add in breathing room around things. Even if you don't know what the actual guidelines to do such a thing is, I would guess that there's somebody either at the school, or maybe you know somebody that's dabbled in some graphic design whatsoever, or you can look at things where you say, oh, I like the way that this blog is designed. That feels like what Stacey was talking about. It has some breathing room, it's easy to look at, and when I look away at the page and I come back, I remember the headline. So wherever those pieces are that you want people to remember, there is some direct response methodology tied into that, because you want people to see, oh, this is a call out. It's bright yellow. Please make sure you look at this thing because it's important for homework tonight, or whatever the case may be. So all of those things that you learned from magazines that you read and magazine pages that you might be like, oh, I can't look at this anymore. There's a reason for that.
Awesome. Well, that's great feedback for Jose. And Jose, let us know what you think, and share what you're working on.
Definitely.
It's something that I think is unique about the music and the media tech industry. Is like, whether we're artists or musicians or engineers who go to tons of shows on nights and weekends, we love staying involved. Like, it's this perfect blend between a day job and an after-hours activity. Truly, keep us posted with what you're working on.
And Jose, let me know too if you asking about textual content isn't getting right at what you're talking about. I hear textual content and I think pages of instructional things, but maybe you're talking about web, maybe you're talking about something else. And Jay, certainly give him my email address. I'd be more than happy to go back and forth a bit more direct about that.
Sounds great. Sounds great. My phone is just exploding with requests for your email address. So, I will definitely connect to you guys. And so, again, the best way to get a hold of us right now for the next 20 minutes or so is through the Q&A pane, or emailing your questions to Chuck at callen5@stanford.edu. We will get back to the questions of this. So Owen, let me post his question right now.
This is a great question.
All right, so Stacey, how do you want to articulate this? Owen might be getting to one of the great tension problems that goes on in teams between design, engineering, and shipping.
Absolutely.
What do you think? How do you want to explain this in your own words?
How do you handle the tension between changing product features / requirements and your vision of the visual design of the product, right? How often does great even when it might be. So, this is the epic battle that exists between us all the time. I will say that when you're young, you want every single best-looking design to be the winner. Sometimes that's not the right thing. And it takes experience to get to that point of understanding when you have to let go of, but that's the nicest looking option I have. That design is amazing. But at the end of the day, remember your goals. If the goal is that the customer can walk through this submission form and they know where to go next, and they're having a hard time navigating it, it doesn't matter how pretty it is, it doesn't matter how good it looks in a screenshot, if it's not useful to the end user, those are your defining moments. So, to your question, the second part of your question about even when it might mean more effort on the back end, make the argument based on your customer interviews, based on your customer research. If you know that the target market or the target audience for this product that you're working on is really influenced by high-end animations and beautiful transitions, and that is very much appealing, and you've shown that in your tests, then you have all the reason to submit that for a request to the dev team and say, customer says yes, therefore we should say yes. Product manager, do you agree? PM should also agree, because we're here to satisfy the customers at the end of the day. It's a little hard and incredibly challenging to, again, put that ego down and for you to just design for a different end goal. But there's a really incredible inherent feeling when you know and you've seen the customer use it. We did this with Spire, where it was like, nope, it's not worth, making that decision about that icon because the customers had no idea what it meant. Yeah, it looks really cool, and I want to put it on a t-shirt, but it doesn't mean that it's the right one.
Very cool. Very cool. So for those of you who are kind of popping in and out, you might not know. So Spire is an iOS app that iZotope just released for doing multi-track recording, and it has a ton of intelligence built into it. So Stacey's been giving us some really awesome examples, from her experience throughout the industry, but also recently on that. So thank you, Owen, for your question and seemingly knowing how inducing it really is. Another one that hopefully is less inducing. Can you tell us about the easiest way to A/B test your design and find out what works? I mean, this maybe assumes that you do A/B test.
Indeed, A/B testing is super important. Different clients, different places. It's sometimes a fight to be able to get to that point of A/B testing, but the value is incredible. We actually A/B tested our first landing page for Spire because I just was curious that if we talked about audio quality, if that would matter more and get people to be like, oh, I care about audio quality, I'm going to give them my email address. Or if we talked about your ability to make a quick demo. What's more important? What resonates more with your customer? I had a teeny tiny team of web people to build that A/B test for me. The other side we could have done was we could have just used internal folks, and I was going to say this to Owen's question too. Even if you don't have the ability to get access to real customers, using people within your workspace works just as well. Often it's just the same. You just have to know when your employees or your fellow employees are super users, or they meet the persona, or they don't. Either way, finding out who the anti-persona is just as important as finding who the persona is. So some tools that are out there, and I'll add this to the links as well, uxpin.com is a great place where it allows you to wireframe quickly, to build templates for lots of different devices, mobile especially, and then you can actually build separate websites with separate URLs. It has analytics tied to it. I believe if you pay for the premium, which is only like $40 a month, you actually end up getting mouse flow technology with that as well. So you can see these heat maps of where people are highlighting as they read, or, oh, they keep circling around this area where it's empty, or it's filled with a cat with laser beams. I don't know, whatever it is. That's one of the most helpful tools that I've seen lately that's very inexpensive, and you don't need to know how to code.
Awesome. That's a great recommendation. I know that a lot of people are looking for lightweight ways to prototype and put this stuff into action.
The other last tip I'll say on that is, if the only thing you have access to is a printer and paper or screenshots, and you have 10 friends that you can email it to and say, which one resonates with you best? Or you set up 5 and 5 and show each a different design and see who resonates more. Do you have 4 out of 5 people that are reacting really well to A compared to like 1.5 that are reacting okay to B? That's your signal.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, again, we'll add that to the list of resources. So some of the resources, just to point out again for folks, if you have no idea where these resources will be, this is a face-to-face session that is part of the free online class Careers in Media Technology. So what you'll do is go to this top link, kadenze.com, and just log in for Careers in Media Technology. When you get there, make your way over to the Connect box, and that will be where the forum is. We'll have a really easy to find, great UX alternative for finding all these links from today's session. So jumping right in, tons of viewers coming on. So thank you all so much for spending some time hanging out with us and getting to know Stacey a little bit better. Moving on to a question that Charlie submitted. So Charlie writes in, he is he's entering a 2-year grad program in the learning science and educational product design. How does he make the most of his academic experience and ensure that his 2-year graduate program translates to the real world?
Ooh, excellent question, Charlie. Think about this. How do I make the most of an academic experience and translate it to the working world? It may start with the inverse of that. It may start with you saying, here's a real world. Here's how I can apply it during my graduate work, so that you get that initial batch of real world learning, while even if it's thought experiments, even if, as you're entering educational product design, let me think about this as an example. If there's a tool that you already know that you enjoy using, but you think you could make it better, and you have an opportunity to present to the class, to position some of your work, to analyze something that is in your wheelhouse, but also positions you in that product design realm, dissect the things that you wish or hope to work on when you get out of that grad program. I would say, and then constantly just doing thought experiments is super helpful. That's been probably my biggest thing over the years, as I would wish to work on certain clients, or I would hope that I got an opportunity to end up working for a music company. It was like, how do you go about that? How can I get there? What types of conversations and positions can I have? So again, I'm going to go back to the conference link and say that while you're in your grad program, find out what other conferences are out there that correlate to those very specific interests. It may be one talk out of 12. But if you have the ability to either a la carte your entry into that one session, or go to the whole conference and make sure you go up and talk to the speaker afterwards. Build that networking connection now, and then also, again, take them out to lunch, coffee, pick their brain, and it will fuel and inform where you'll head after that grad program.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacey. That's hopefully, Charlie, you get the most of your program. Keep us posted, and of course, if this is useful, please definitely consider sharing Careers in Media Technology with the folks at your grad program, or let us know what we can do better. We got another great. I love case studies. They're personally my favorite way of learning and also teaching a process end to end. Knowing that we don't have a ton of time, Alexandra writes in, Stacey, can you explain the product process behind a product such as the Spire Recorder app? And so, is there a way that you could give a high-level overview of how you went from ideation through it being on our phones?
Absolutely. I will say, so for those of you that are familiar with Lean UX, it's very much a Lean UX process. meaning that we did rough drawings, hypotheses, and customer interviews to then build prototypes to test with those customers over and over and over and over. Sometimes they would be screenshots. Sometimes they would be just those paper prototypes that were cut out and slid across the table. And then we watched for the trends. You're always looking for signals, not necessarily for the customer to tell you what they don't know, but if you can find the trending signals that say, oh, when we were thinking about adding in the ability to allow you to monitor your mic input, people are really, they say that they have trouble when they don't know that they're clipping the mic on their phone regularly, or wherever those problems tend to crop up, it will give you the ideas and gave us the ideas as to where to take the app next. Other processes included, we're an agile company. We practice agile methodologies on the reg. We have Scrum. We ended up roping in some design sprints, meaning that basically that the product designers had the ability to build some upfront work first in order to discover how those features would get built next. Some more of the traditional things where even for the branding, we brought in the whole company to take a look at the potential logo for an icon for the app, and we printed them out on as big a paper as we could, black and white, super simple. People will marry themselves to choices based on color first. So this is a tip for all of you that end up dealing with concepts. Go black and white first, grayscale first. You'll get the most raw opinions out of everyone. In addition to, if it works in grayscale and black and white, it'll always work. So we invited the whole company to dot vote. We gave everybody 3 dots, and they voted on their favorite icon so that we could then submit that to our lawyer and say, okay, these are the things we will likely want to trademark. What's available? And if they're all available, then we have a hard decision to make. But it was super helpful. So there was a lot of that small user testing moment. We had a beta that we would regularly send builds out as well. And let's see, what else did we add? Oh, we added in company-wide sprint demos. We have like a science fair now where everyone sets up with some of their trifold boards and a laptop and all the devices you could imagine that you could use Spire on, and everybody would come over and play, and product designers and team members at large would take notes on anything that cropped up during those.
Wow, that's a lot going on, and and I would assume that it's fair to say that Spire is early in its development.
Even though it's live in the App Store now, there are some things that we're looking forward to learning where those signals and trends lie on decisions that either we didn't have the time to add in, or that we were just so unsure that we wanted the market to tell us what would be useful next. So
would you consider, and you wrote an amazing blog post on this topic, would you consider Spire to currently be your MVP, or is it actually beyond that?
Spire's beyond an MVP.
Okay. So internally, there was a Spire MVP.
Correct.
Can you describe what it looked like?
Very similar to where it is now.
Okay.
We kept the UI design, the actual look and feel of the app, very minimal. From doing competitor trend studies and standard competitive analysis, but as well as just trying to keep it more about keeping our users in the zone and less about worrying why that thing is blue and why this thing is green, trying to give people comfort as well as like go back and focus on just making great music.
Yep.
So that MVP at its outset did not have an XY mixing pad. I don't think it had any mixing pad first. There were multiple editions of the MVP for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, if folks have feedback or suggestions or questions on Spire, could they reach out to you as well?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And maybe this would be a good moment. What are all the various ways that people can reach out to you or should connect?
Oh, sure. Let's see. So I'd say email. I will give you my personal email so that's a better place to go back and forth. I've got plenty of emails in the work inbox. We'll keep that separate.
Awesome.
So my full name but maiden name, so StaceyDyer@gmail.com is my email. And then on Twitter, and Instagram, as well as a Facebook page. I have a blog that I regularly update called Stacey's DIY Life. And the key thing here is that Stacey is spelled with an EY. So as long as you remember that, you can get to Stacey's DIY Life on Instagram, Twitter. The blog is stacey'sdiylife.com. And I'm constantly intertwining product design methodologies into regular life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we will make sure to have all the social media stuff again for everybody. We'll bring it all back to the Kadenze discussion forum, and an answer to a question that we just had. Serenity, thank you again for your question earlier. And yes, this session is being recorded, so that way, if there's something you want to rewatch later, or if you had to cut out for a few minutes, we will have it online and available probably later today. So I will link that once again from the Kadenze forum. All right, so in some of the remaining time we have left, there's one question that I would love to kind of take a stab at. Actually, so we have two questions that were submitted that have to do with interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Rashawn, I think, is talking about interviews for getting a job as opposed to a product designer interviewing customers. If it is interviewing customers, Rashawn, we'll get back to that in another session. Can you talk about how you go about interviewing designers for your team and what you might be looking for?
Sure. First, always starts with portfolio. I have a set of products in my head that I know we need product design help on. So, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that you show that start to finish, from concept to creation, is sort of the coined phrase, where you show your sketches, your loose wireframes, any paper prototypes, and then how the design moved over time. So make sure you screenshot along the way as you guys are working on different projects. It's really key for any manager to be able to see how you approach different processes, as well as you're up against a dev team, right? You're going to have to answer to them as much as you're going to get push and pull with each other. So as you walk through during the interview, you'll walk through your portfolio, and some of the questions that I would ask is like, tell me about a time where you made a concession because the dev team said no. And it's important to understand how you approach those moments, and then how you find success also. So it's having those key points ready to go. I'd say also getting a good understanding of, product designers are sort of unicorns out in the world. They are a mix of UX and UI and graphic design. And if you're in audio, then it's also audio expertise. I mean, it's insane. And it's amazing for the people that I've had the pleasure of working with, that we have people out there that are built like this. It's not everyone. And I will say that for the 4 product designers I managed last year, everyone, if you looked at, if I were to split the facets into, say, 4 bar graphs, everyone would have different bar graphs at different stages. Some of the guys are excellent in graphic design. Some of them are excellent in product management and just getting the team to rally around decisions. Other people are more focused on high level, and they have the long-term strategy in their mind, and secondarily are great at graphic design. So really getting an understanding of who you are as a graphic designer, as a product designer, whatever it is, understanding who you are and who you are not is basically one of the key questions that will help any employer understand how you fit into their culture, the team's culture, and then how you balance things out. And then also how you approach where you're like, well, I know I've got some weak areas in this, but I'm ready to tackle it in these ways.
Awesome. Great feedback, and really tactical. And that's it's something where I'm finding a lot of the mentors, yourself included, Stacey, have been so willing to look at people's portfolios and just kind of give broad strokes overviews. I mean, about include a little bit more of this, a little less of this, or if if you're only including, this is a point you were making earlier, if you're only including high res mockups, showing off what you're doing, that might be awesome if you're applying for work only doing that type of work.
Right.
So, Stacey, you have maybe 10 more minutes or so?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. The viewer count continues to always increase, which is outstanding. Thank you guys all for watching, and thanks for submitting questions. And for those of you that are submitting questions for the joy of learning, I really appreciate that. But we had a generous prize that I wanted to offer up to thank you all for coming. So we are offering up a free set of Soul Republic Shadow wireless earphones. I don't have them next to me, but they're cool. And so one person, Stacey is not included, but Stacey will send you something else. We'll get these headphones, and we'll announce it right after the call is done. But in order to do that, we really need to know who you are. So, what we need is for you to get your question in. If you already asked a question, awesome, we see you. If you haven't yet, use the Q&A app, submit your question, and if you don't see the Q&A box, that's okay. Submit a question, or at the very least something saying, yo, I was in the Hangout, to Chuck. So CALLEN5@stanford.edu. Take care of that in the next 10 minutes, and we'd love it. Moving on. Awesome. Of course, I offer prizes and questions come in. So Stedman offers up your own interview question. Can you tell us about a time you made a concession for the dev team?
Oh my God, when have I not?
You're interviewing yourself right now. I love it. Thank you, Stedman.
Me, myself, and I over the years, and I have worked with a lot of IT professionals, my business partner for Triple Frog included. Sometimes it's because of deadlines. You want to close out the sprint successfully. You want to complete that task. You want to hit it hard and make it live so that you can get user feedback, or so that you can please the client, or whatever the case may be. And when the dev team is like, look, it'll take 6 days to get that in. Today's Wednesday. This is due on Friday. What else can we do? You kind of make concessions together, because I will say the dev team isn't always saying these things because they don't want to do it. They're just as aware of the deadlines as you. It just happens to be that they have the expertise to steer the ship in order to say, we can avoid that iceberg, or we're going to hit it. So you kind of come at it together and say, okay, what's the compromise? How can we get closer to this, animation? Or maybe it's better that we simplify the, submission form in order for users to see it all on one page instead of multiple pages. Sometimes there are happy accidents that come out of those concessions. I'm trying to think of one pinnacle moment where it made a big difference to me. Oh, you know what's funny? I don't know if anybody is a regular user of WordPress, but as I was building this blog, I made tons of concessions to the blog template because I didn't want to deal with it. So I had to trial and error until I found a blog template that met at basically my MVP of requirements. So just the least amount of things that I wanted to make sure that it was legible, it was nice to look at, it had breathing room around it, and that I had the ability to have classy looking headlines. Those are my important things. But at the end of the day, I completely succumb to the force that is my own little dev team in the WordPress template. So that's a recent experience where it's like, I'm not coding. I'm just not going to do it. And for the moments where I have to, it's more so about the formatting of the post so that my readers can make it through my posts enjoyably.
Awesome. Well, that's a great example where you wanted to stay in the zone, you didn't want to code.
Right.
And that maybe takes us to Max's question, which is getting some good upvotes. And thank you, Stedman, for turning Stacey's question around on her. That's a great idea. So Max wants to know what you think about technical challenges during your own product design process. How do you meld designing with actually building the product?
Some of the best moments you'll ever have are when you can sit side by side with the dev. If you can sit down together and crank out the intricacies and the little subtleties that make the design process really come to life and see it come together sitting next to one another, it makes such a big difference. You feel like you're in less of a silo. I mean, this is literal, right? But I've been in tons of these scenarios where I design a thing, I ship over my stuff to you, you end up coding it up, I look at it and go, oh, well, that doesn't look like what I mocked up. Why doesn't it look like it? Okay, let's sit down, let's work together. If we had just done that at the get-go, we can just get to the other side of the hill on the technical challenges so much faster. And sometimes this is hard to do if you guys are remote and you're working together like we are today, right? I mean, Jay, you're on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I'm happening over here on the East Coast, and if we had the ability to screen share, even just a little bit to show instantaneous changes of like, well, what do you think about something like this? Okay, well, I see you mocked up this thing over here. Here are some ideas about how we could approach it. Because oftentimes, the devs will be like, well, they didn't really specify how they wanted to get this thing done, so I'm just going to do it the way I know. And there's not really a moment of collaboration where even if you're on the phone with one another or on a Google Hangout, whatever the case may be, that's your best way to overcome those challenges, because otherwise it's like isolationary. You kind of have a little disgruntled situation that ends up happening, and you can avoid it and really blend the two together, and then you understand the dev while they're learning you. And so while you guys understand how each person approaches it, that's the real value right there.
Awesome. And Max adds in, is there anything kind of domain specific with bridging the gap between product design and development? In his case, he's looking specifically at building apps or websites for music streaming or sharing.
Gotcha.
Would that lead you to go in a different direction, knowing that?
No, it's still the same, because if let's say you're only focusing on iOS apps, you're going to want to sit down with a dev that knows Objective-C or is working in, there's a bunch of other coding platforms like Xcode that you can dig into the work first or together and start staring at that code together, even at a more rudimentary state, and watch it live, coming to closer and closer arriving at being a product. But no matter what the industry is, your technology stacks, your choices, your challenges, I believe, are very similar. You might be having DSP conversations about how to get, bit rates to transfer at a different level compared to somebody that's talking about healthcare, but customer goals are still very similar. Usability through forms and pages and all of that stuff is still same challenges. Great question.
Very cool. Where I think it might be great to end, this is not a question, but an acknowledgement. Thank you, Serenity, and Serenity thanks you, Stacey, for all of your questions. Sure, I'm happy to organize this session. I acknowledge that it's super valuable for everybody out there to hear from leading mentors who have a decade, 2 decades of experience, and especially as you're getting started, either as a student or in your first few years in industry, it's great to have mentors that are willing to give back. And so, in the same way that so many people have helped Stacey and I as we go along, so many people have been helping us, and it's the best thing to do for us to be able to give back to you. So, would you agree, Stacey?
100%. And let me just say, just because I'm in my 10th or 11th year in my career, the mentoring hasn't stopped. I still seek out partners and look for advice, and it doesn't matter how many years of experience you have or you don't have. It's such an important part to getting where you want to go or discovering where you want to go.
I couldn't agree more. So, Stacey, I want to thank you again for joining us on this very well attended. I'm thrilled. All you guys that showed up, really great job. Fantastic questions. We had more questions than we've had in the previous Hangout. So this was the face-to-face Hangout with Stacey, the Creative Strategist and formerly Product Design Director at iZotope. Stacey has had about 17 careers, all embedded into a very short period, and that's the way the world is working nowadays, where you are given so many opportunities. What we're going to do, we're going to put a link to all of the information, link to all the information that Stacey shared, including some of the ways you can get in touch with her, and also be a good place for you to get your questions answered if we didn't have a chance to answer it today. So that'll be on Kadenze through the Careers in Media Technology Connect session. So just log in and look for this little Connect box. There'll be a forum called Stacey Messier Face-to-Face. One more time, it's kadenze.com. And on behalf of myself and everybody at Stanford University and Real Industry, which is a nonprofit that's supporting this type of work, and Stacey, I'll speak for you, Stacey. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys. It's great to chat with everyone.
All right, and we'll post this recording. Take a look for it. And thanks for the shout out, Max. See ya.
Take care, everyone.